Greetings and welcome to Legacies of Wavryn, Lore of the Endelment. This will be chapter 17 of this reading. Just as Zaec teleported us near the ballistic Kexan, Salus said, "I thought we came to fight a warrior, but all I see is some punk bitch quelling." Yojin slapped my little brother upside his head, then said, "White boy, shut your mouth." Yojin and Vincent readied their weapons, while the Kexan stopped his random violence. The man looked over his right shoulder, seeing all of us floating just 10 feet from him. My brothers and friends moved to surround the Kexan, Salus closer to my left and Zaec closer to my right. When the Kexan turned to face me, he said, "Well now, who says beggars can't be choosers? But there seems to be somewhat of a problem." He glanced at all of us, then looked back at me and asked, "Where are the rest of you little ingrates?" "Don't worry," Zaec replied with a smirk. "They're not coming. We're more than enough to take you on, peasant." The Kexan became angry and went to grunt at my twin brother, then said, "You pest. I'm no more of a peasant than you are on this disgusting planet. What makes you think you're so special?" The Kexan looked back at me, raising his voice and yelled, "What makes you bastards think that you're any better than me? What gives you the right to sit there and talk down to me like that?" With no care for an answer, the Kexan jolted over towards me and tried to strike my face with his right fist. However, my little brother jolted over and blocked his attack, raising his left arm as he put himself between me and the assailant. Yet the Kexan tried to push forward still, as he glared at me over my brother's shoulder with a very hateful expression. After a few seconds, the Kexan said, "Royalty. You're nothing but a bunch of royal dumbasses." Zaec bolted over for a high spin kick to push the man back, but as our enemy recollected and motioned for me again, my friends intercepted him. Yojin and Vincent jolted over and swung around to punch the Kexan in the stomach, Yojin with his right and Vincent with his left. As they kept their fists pressed against the stunned Kexan, Yojin said, "No one talks down to my homie." "Same here," Vincent complied. They pulled their fists back and punched with them again straight into the Kexan's face, tossing the enemy away. Salus jolted to kick the Kexan with his right foot, throwing the crazed man farther. Then Zaec teleported himself behind the man. Our enemy tried to stop himself in midair, but my twin brother just kicked his right foot into the Kexan's lower back, painfully stunning the man. With that, I jolted over and back-kicked my left heel into the left side of the Kexan's head, tossing him down into the ground and about 20 yards away. Turning to face where our enemy laid, I adjusted my glasses and said, "You know, for a Kexan with darkness, he isn't all that powerful." "Yeah," Zaec said. "Pathetic." Salus flew over to stand next to me, facing where the Kexan crashed, while Yojin and Vincent jolted over behind us. The Kexan laughed out loud, then yelled, "You think I'm pathetic?" He then stood up to gaze at us with an evil grin, tilting his head back and to his right as he had his arms hang straight down. In his weird stance, the man continued, "It took all 5 of you punks just to throw me to the ground, and you didn't even scratch me. So how is it that I'm pathetic?" The Kexan moved his head to tilt it forward and down a bit, while he raised both of his hands up slightly, said, "It's time for us to end your lives." Just then, 4 more Kexans flew up from behind 2 buildings, 2 men from the right and a man and a woman from the left. However, with how Vincent reacted, I was only concerned about one. My friend moved to be in front of our group as he looked to the woman and said, "Her." The woman Kexan he pointed out was light-skinned and had on skin-tight jeans that were slightly cut at the knees, while she had a black t-shirt. She was a redhead that had very deep blue-colored eyes that shined slightly. I glanced at my friend, confused, while he readied himself and said, "She's mine." Yojin hit his fists together, then said, "I'm going after Po' Boy." Of course, that didn't mean anything other than going after a different one. The other 3 males didn't seem like they were a threat to us, so Zaec and Salus lined up to take one each head on. Hopefully they wouldn't somehow accidentally go after Yojin's. That would only piss him off. With the others taken, I was left to face the Kexan leader myself. Once everyone readied, I turned towards the leader and called out, "It doesn't matter how many allies you have, you won't win this fight. Now either leave these humans alone and live in a peaceful environment with them, or we will have to take drastic measures." The leader again became very angry at what I had said, lowering his arms as he curled his hands into tight fists and yelled, "What makes you think I want to live with these inferior hellspawns? I didn't come here to run away like you did, Shero. I came here to obliterate this planet's worthless inhabitants, so that I can rule over it, to create my new empire, to finally end the madness that you ungrateful royal bastards have brought upon us." Still trying to convince the man, I raised my voice and said, "I know what you're thinking, but killing innocents and fighting me isn't the answer. Shut up! Listen to me. I too wish to rid our worlds of this horrid life between our races, along with ending Dominic's empire. But the way you're going at things isn't going to help." "You don't get it," the woman barked. "As long as even one of you little bastards live, you'll just enslave us as your rulers did before you." With nothing able to persuade him, the leader threw his head back and shouted, "Kill them!" In that instant, the other 4 Kexans quickly changed into their darkness forms and bolted for us. The ones my brothers fought only had 1 tail, yet the others that my friends went after had 3. For the first strike, the Kexans punched my brothers and friends at the same time. Then 2 quickly kicked me in the back of my head before I could turn to defend myself. They tossed me towards their leader and slammed me into the ground just in front of his feet, with my body lying on its right side slightly. As I motioned to pick myself up, the leader calmly asked, "Not fun getting ganged up on, is it, peasant?" I braced myself up on my hands and knees as I replied, "No, it's not." I then quickly stood up and clenched my right hand into a fist to punch the man in the face, while I barked, "Neither is this!" The force of my strike sent him into a construction yard about 4 blocks back from where he stood. He quickly recovered and jolted out of the rubble, motioning for me with his left fist pulled back. However, once the Kexan swung, I dodged him by slightly leaning to my right side, where I countered by striking him in the stomach with my left knee. Shortly after that, I jumped up and flew to hover about 30 feet off the ground. The Kexan recovered from that attack as well, and flew up towards me, keeping a distance of 20 feet. The man stared at me with a smirk, while a small drop of blood came out the left side of his mouth as he said, "Guess it's time I got serious. Time for a good old-fashioned butt-kicking." The Kexan and I jolted at each other and started rapidly punching and kicking one another, trying to get in a strike, but at the same time defending ourselves from our opponent's attacks. After 5 minutes of fighting, we clashed our right fists, creating a shockwave that fragmented every glass-like object within a quarter-mile radius. Not long after that, did my brothers and my friends clash with their opponents. Zaec and Salus were high in the air above me, with Yojin and Vincent on the ground. Vincent had his left foot against the woman's right, while Yojin had his right forearm against his foes. The Kexan Yojin was against spoke in a different accent and said, "Come now, man. You can't fight any better than that. Y'all fucking with the wrong niggas. I'm just warming up, so you better start picking up the pace, homeboy. Better watch your mouth, man, because you may just get what you want." The Kexan then quickly pulled back his left fist and swung to strike Yojin's face, while he yelled, "Ya bumbleclot!" The force sent Yojin into a 3-story building behind him, where it nearly crumbled over my friend. The Kexan then went to try and fight against my little brother, who was able to fend the 2 off only for a short time before being thrown to the ground and knocked unconscious. Yet he didn't go down without obliterating one of the weaker Kexans first. Meanwhile, The woman that Vincent was fighting struck my friend with one of her tails and used it to slam him into a small building nearby. At the same time, she yelled, "Down, boy!" Afterwards, she jolted up after Zaec, who killed his weak opponent but was unable to defend against the woman. She uppercutted my twin brother, knocking him out as well, then stabbed her tails into his torso as she pushed to slam him into the ground. Keeping my brother pinned, the woman laughed for a bit, then said, "Stay." A few seconds later, she calmly said, "Good boy." The dark-skinned Kexan flew down next to the redhead, who asked, "Should we send this one away now, Cameron?" "Let's do it, Johnny," Cameron replied. "The boy is no longer useful." I fought the leader a little longer, then stopped when I sensed my allies were taken out. I glanced down to where Zaec had been pinned and yelled, "Come on, brother, get up!" "First etiquette in combat," the leader said as he pulled back his right fist. When I motioned to look back, he swung his fist and struck me in my face as he quickly yelled, "Be aware!" The force of the Kexan's punch threw me about a quarter of a mile from where I was and nearly buried me into the ground. As I laid there, staring up at the sky just about to black out, I could hear Salus, Yojin, and Vincent trying to fight back against the Kexans. I tried coaching myself to get up, while the same sinister voice came back to haunt me. It said, "Why fight, my lord? You'll only get yourself hurt." Though I wasn't really responding to the voice, it still said, "I need to help them." "No, you don't. They can handle this. Don't worry about it. They don't know what they're capable of." "Don't worry. They can handle it. Think of it as a simple mathematical equation. 3 times 3 equals less mortals." That, I realized who that voice was. Shadow. I pushed myself just enough to sit up, then said, "So that's it then. You're not telling me to let my brothers and friends handle this. You're telling me to let those 3 Kexans kill them." Shadow gave a sinister laugh, then spoke clearly in my head and said, "It's about time your minuscule brain figured it all out. Now, let those Kexans live so that darkness can rule once more." I rose to my feet and yelled, "Enough, Shadow! I won't let you manipulate me like you have with everyone else." I raised my head up to face the sky and yelled, "Your soul is now mine! Your powers are mine! And your rule is over!" My aura became visible as a translucent blood-red flare around my body, and a shockwave blew out from me, crushing everything within a 20-foot radius. At the same time, it raised small bits of rubble around me into the air, while large strips of lightning struck around me every few seconds. I jolted towards my allies as Shadow gave a sinister laugh again. Then he said, "There's nothing you can do now. You're too late." As I jolted to try and save my brothers and friends, I broke through several structures with my left shoulder, while I had my right fist pulled back for a punch. Once I busted through the last wall, I quickly swung my right fist out at the lead Kexan. He was standing in between his 2 friends, but that wasn't the case anymore when I struck him in the center of his face as hard as I could, sending him almost out of my range of sight. Before the other 2 Kexans could do anything, I quickly jolted over to Janine at my right to spin kick her with my right foot. The force of it sent her through 3 buildings and struck her into a brick wall. I then swung around to jolt towards Cameron and roundhouse kicked him with my left foot, which sent him through 3 other buildings as well to smash into the pavement. I placed my feet down and turned towards Zaec, only to see him lying on the floor with his soul about to float away. I tried to jolt over to reach with my right hand the sphere to put it back before it could vanish, but a black foxtail struck through the left side of my torso and wrapped itself around me, pulling me away. Not only did it stop me from grasping my brother's soul, it broke away my energy concentration as well and forced my aura to stop flaring. Just then, the lead Kexan yelled, "Thanks for sparing us the trouble from having to find you again, peasant!" The other 2 Kexans jolted towards me, but stopped just 30 feet away. They each struck 3 tails into me, while the leader struck his last 2 tails into me as well, a total of 9. In that instant, the lead Kexen shouted, "You're finished!" At once, the 3 Kexens ripped their tails away from me, trying to use Shadow's technique to try and kill me. When the tails reverted back to their respective hosts, I dropped onto my right knee and leaned slightly over to my right side. I just painfully watched as my brother's soul drifted off into the atmosphere, then disappeared. My twin brother was gone. The lead Kexen laughed, thinking he had defeated me as well, as I heard him and his friends walk over to me. Then he said, "The 9 black foxtails of darkness can kill any mortal when ripped away from the victim's body. It doesn't matter how many people you need to use them. And at this rate, not even Dominic himself can stop us." No longer willing to hold back, I began to laugh after hearing what the man said as I raised myself back onto my feet. I then turned around to face the lead Kexen, with both him and his friends stepping back in surprise that I wasn't dead yet. My wounds healed completely, and my clothes rejuvenated as well, including my awesome glasses. With that, I raised my head to look down at the man before me, giving an evil grin as I said, "You won't win. You don't even know how to properly use those limbs." "How the hell is he still standing?" Janine barked. I laughed once more, then said, "Shadow's powers can't kill those with the powers of a god. Therefore," I tilted my head down, my eyes still focused on the leader, and said, "None of you Quillans have what it takes to kill me." The 3 Kexens took another step back in fear, while the leader said, "Impossible. I thought the gods couldn't help royals. Shadow told me himself." I just laughed at that as well, while the man continued, "There's no way, unless it can't be." My body took its own vile form of darkness, having a wave of black energy cover me for a moment to transform. Then I spoke again in my combined voice of Shadow's and my own as I said, "Well now, shall we begin with round 2? Only becoming pissed, Janine lashed out all 3 of her tails at me as she yelled, "Get him!" The leader quickly turned to the woman as he raised his left hand to stop her and yelled, "No!" However, it was too late. Just before Janine's tails could strike me, I quickly grabbed all 3 of them in one motion with just my right hand. I then turned my eyes to look at her as I tightened my grip on the limbs until I ripped them apart from where I held them. Having done so, broke Janine away from her darkness, where she fell to her knees and began to scream in pain for a moment. The lead Kexen turned to me, terrified, as he lowered his arm and said, "No, he possesses true darkness." Cameron jolted towards me and yelled, "Don't worry, man, I got him." The lead Kexen quickly looked over at his comrade and yelled, "No, stop! He's mine." When Cameron jolted at me, I turned my head to look over at him with a blank expression. I saw that he had pulled his right foot back for a kick. Yet just as he swung his foot to kick me, I used Dark Vanish to teleport behind him. Having missed, he slid a bit to halt his momentum and looked around to try and find me, as if I was still in front of him. I tapped his right shoulder with my right index finger to get his attention, spooking the man as he quickly spun around to face me and thought to position himself in defense to whatever I might throw at him. That was dumb, but if I really wanted to hurt him, I would have done it so fast he wouldn't have time to react to the pain before I told him what happened. I just crossed my arms and stood waiting for the Kexen to make another move, smirking at his surprised expression towards me and asked, "What's wrong? I thought you had me. Didn't you see me sluggishly walk by you?" Cameron just got angry and said, "Just because you can move faster than me doesn't mean you've become stronger than me. Don't think you can win this fight." I shrugged my shoulders for a second as I said, "Okay, if that's what you think." I chuckled for a bit at that thought, then lowered my arms and spoke to insult his accent as I said, "Try to punch me down, man. prove myself wrong. Cameron quickly pulled back his right fist for a punch, but the Kexan was struck by my friend, Yojin, who jolted over and struck with his own right fist as hard as he could into the Kexan's face. He tossed the enemy far off and into a building, then stood panting with his left side towards me. Vincent bolted out and leaped to slam his feet down onto the redhead's neck, knocking her out. He then moved to stand with me at my left side, facing the lead Kexan. I glanced at my two friends and said, "About time you guys showed up." Yojin spit blood out to his right, then said, "That's payback for breaking my glasses, dog." Vincent noticed my new form and raised his right eyebrow slightly, then called out, "Virus, let's go. This fight's out of our hands." He then glanced down at the redhead, yet said nothing more as he gave his cold-hearted gaze. Yojin turned his head away and quietly said, "Damn." Though he hated to retreat, my friend knew that if Vincent knows they can't handle the fight, they were really going to get hurt, possibly killed. Yojin put his gold knuckles away as he glanced at me, without a care to my new appearance, and said, "They're all yours, white boy." The two jolted away to where the others were watching the battle from, somehow making Cameron think he could attack me and get a good hit in. He struck me once in my chest, then pulled his fist back slightly as he became confused. His attack did nothing. It didn't damage me, didn't hurt, it didn't even budge me the slightest. However, the Kexan ignored his suspicions and just continued to strike me as fast and as hard as he could. Believing he could damage me somehow, the Kexan rapidly punched and kicked me anywhere that was open to him. I thought that was funny, since I knew there was nothing he could do at that point to defeat me. I was already too strong for him in my original form, so in my darkness, I completely outranked him in strength, speed, and power. The lead Kexan yelled, "What are you, insane? He possesses the true powers of darkness. He could even be the Endelment himself." "Shut it, Mon," Cameron barked. "He's the most powerful being in all the known universe. You can't beat him." "Shut up, Jeff," Janine barked as she picked herself up. "You're just a fucking pussy." Losing his warrior might and pride, Jeff dropped to his knees and said, "The Endelment. That's why we can't beat him." I got fed up with Cameron trying to harm me, so I quickly spun a roundhouse kick to the left side of his head with my left heel to throw him into the ground just in front of his leader. When I placed my foot back on the ground, Janine jolted towards me and kicked me in the right side of my head with her left foot, just barely nudging my head towards my left shoulder. I looked over at the woman with a blank stare and said, "You're starting to bore me." Janine tried to pull her foot away, but I quickly grabbed her ankle with my left hand and pulled her towards me. I let go of her ankle and gave a hard punch into her back, slamming her into the ground just in front of her allies. I vanished over to the three Kexans and stood about 10 feet away, staring at them with a smirk on my face again. Cameron and Janine motioned to stand against me, while Jeff just stared at me in fear. The two non-believers raised their fists in defense, with Janine standing at Jeff's left side as she said, "Don't think you've won just yet, you bastard." She gave a quick roar as she changed back into her darkness form, then said, "The three of us together can take you out with no problem." I laughed at that, then crossed my arms on my chest as I raised my right eyebrow and asked, "If just one of you couldn't even scratch my clothes, then how the hell do you expect that the three of you together can even come close to damaging me? Why don't you just shut the fuck up and watch?" "Yeah, man," Cameron added, standing at his leader's right side. "Don't you know the old saying, the strength in numbers?" I moved my hands out to my sides as I held them up slightly, while shrugging my shoulders again as I turned my head to the left a bit and closed my eyes. At the same time, I said, "You don't have to be so rude." I then crossed my arms again as I looked back over at Jeff, who was still terrified and probably wanted nothing more to do with the fight. Salis jolted over to my right side, slightly sobbing after he had checked on our brother. Then he got into a fighting position as he angrily said, Let's go, brother. We can take them. Together we'll... Keeping my focus on the three Kexans, I quickly raised my right hand at my little brother and calmly said, "Leave." Saelis glanced at me, confused, and asked, "Bro?" I lowered both of my hands as I glared at my foes, while I said, "I'll deal with them myself. I personally want to end this." My little brother just nodded his head in compliance with me, then flew off to where everyone else was to watch. Janine gave a quick laugh, then said, "Well, that was stupid. You're gonna need all the help you can get at this point." I gave a big evil grin as I asked, "You think 3-on-1 will serve you any good? Do you honestly believe you have enough power to beat me?" Jeff stood up as he looked down at the ground in anger, putting his left foot back and raising his fists up slightly, as to ready himself to fight again. About damn time. Regaining his warrior will, Jeff said, "Though my colleagues don't realize it, I know now we can't win." Janine quickly glanced over at him and barked, "You pussy." Simultaneously, Cameron kept his eyes on me as he barked to his leader, Bumbuktot. Jeff ignored his friend's remarks and continued, "I've already issued the fight. My decision is final, even if my fate has been sealed by your hands. The very Endelment himself. So before we begin, I must know. Who are you exactly?" Silence filled the air for a few seconds. Then I replied, "I am the fused entity of the King of Darkness, Shadow, and the Prince of the Royal Dynasty, Zaec, Raek, and Shero. I am the most powerful man in line for the throne on Bodor, with no equal in this realm to say otherwise. I am Shattuck." Shattuck, huh? Interesting the way you did that. Right at that moment, a very strange thing happened. I itched. I quickly motioned into a squatting position, while I turned my head slightly to the left and tilted it back. With that, I used the inner side of my right boot's toe to kick and scratch the back of my right fox ear quickly, making irritated yet soothing moans. After a few seconds, I quickly turned my body to reach one of my tails and raised it closer to me as I went to biting it. The three Kexans just looked at me completely confused and surprised at what I was doing, unable to figure how to react to me in any other way. I couldn't blame them, especially since it was so random. A moment passed, then Janine yelled, "You idiot! We're supposed to be fighting right now! Quit biting yourself!" I quickly stood myself up, noticing my wife and the others in the distance laughing at me. I then got serious again for our fight, moving into my fighting position as I said, "Sorry about that. Where was I? Moron." The fight started with the three Kexans just rapidly punching and kicking me, while I blocked or dodged each strike they threw. It lasted for a while, then ended because I got bored. I simultaneously halted the three Kexans, using 3 of my tails to block against Janine's left foot, the back of my right wrist against Jeff's right fist, and the back of my left wrist against Cameron's left fist. I channeled my dark aura to create a light shockwave that pushed the 3 a couple feet away. Then I lowered my fists and tails as I stood up straight with my tails beginning to flicker around agitated. The 3 Kexans regained their stances, but were slightly hunched forward, while also taking in deep breaths. As I stood myself up straight, watching the 3 Kexans with a smirk, I asked, "What? Getting tired?" I chuckled at that, then continued, "Too bad. And I was just getting warmed up too." My opponents looked between each other, confused, probably wondering how I was able to fight without having to waste hardly any of my energy. They then looked back at me in anger as I said, "Oh well. Nice try though." Just then, I had 6 of my 9 tails break apart from me and float out, 3 to each of my sides. The tails vented out black smoke from where they had parted, both sets quickly forming into one shadowy entity of my former dark self. However, the eyes and teeth of my new shadow entities were just completely pitch black, with only their pupils brightly shining blood red. The shadow entities both vented out black smoke from their fur and hair around their bodies, as if a form of their dark aura. I laughed when noticing the 3 Kexans' surprised expressions to my new trick. Then I said, "Now it's my turn." The 2 entities jolted towards my foes. One went for Cameron as the other went for Janine, both striking the 2 Kexans once in their faces and sending them into the ground. Just after that, I vanished over to Jeff and kicked him in his stomach with my left foot to stun him, then began rapidly striking him with my fists and feet. Each strike I gave was nearly at the speed of sound and had a great amount of force put into it, nothing that he could withstand. After a moment, I struck Jeff in his head as hard as I could with my right fist, shattering his skull on impact and throwing him into the ground. He was soon then accompanied by his friends, after the 2 had a rough beating from my entities. As the 3 Kexans were thrown to the ground, my 2 entities flew back over to me and formed into their tails. They then connected with my body, while I figured of a way to finally deal with my enemies. Cameron and Janine struggled to pick themselves up as Jeff laid on the ground face down, his bones hardly able to rejuvenate as he struggled to say, "So, this is it." "Shut up, pussy," Janine barked. "Unlike you, I'm not gonna die like this." "It's no use. Shattuck's too strong." The 2 stubborn Kexans stood up and turned to me, while Cameron said, "This ain't over, man. I won't go down like this." Jeff motioned to stand up as he turned to me, then I bluntly said, "Not your call." The 3 Kexans stood there and looked up at me in anger, while I gave them a blank expression and continued, "I'm done playing around. It's over." I casually raised my right hand up and pulled it back slightly, while charging a large amount of dark energy at my palm. Within seconds, a dark sphere of energy, no bigger than the size of my fist, formed in my right hand. Unlike normal spherical blasts, this one gave off a slight, fiery complexion. This attack was another of Shadow's greatest powers. If done correctly, this strike could obliterate massive civilizations in one immense blow. However, as powerful as it was, it took too much energy to conjure, both general and spiritual. But at that time, I didn't care. I just wanted to use it, to see how great it was and how well it would work. I looked down at the 3 Kexans with a blank stare and said, "This is for my brother. May your souls be forever lost in the realm of darkness." I swung my hand out towards my enemies and called out, "Desolate flames!" The energy blast shot out as a very large and consistent flaming surge of dark energy, its range hurrying to stretch outwards to cover the area as it flew towards the Kexans. Cameron tried to block the attack, instantly forming a dark brown energy barrier around himself. He had raised his right arm and placed his palm upward to gather energy, the dome having small spikes around the outer edge. However, it was a futile attempt. It took no effort for the strike to break the barrier and incinerate my targets instantly. I sinisterly laughed as I stopped the surge of energy when I sensed 2 of the 3 Kexans' presence had vanished, finding nothing of them left, not even ashes. I lowered my right arm and looked up to find Janine, hovering about 20 feet higher than me and 30 feet away. I don't know how she avoided the attack, but just knowing I could channel it gave her enough to understand that she couldn't win against me. Looking down at me, the woman yelled, "You bastard! I'll make you pay for this! You'll see!" She then turned away from me to fly off, her energy escaping from my range to find her. After using Desolate Flames, as dangerous as that was, my body had nearly no energy left in it. That said, I couldn't hold myself in the darkness form anymore. At the same time, since I used nearly all of my energy, I passed out and fell to the ground face down. The last thing I heard before completely blacking out was Shadow. He sinisterly laughed for a moment, then said, "Not bad. You may just be. However, When I came to, I found myself once again laying on Wolf's lap. She was gently petting my head again, with Bunny gently rubbing my wolf ears. Along with that, the humans around us started their celebration for their holiday as the news channels finished their reports. Wolf and Bunny informed me of what had happened after that bitch Kexen left the area, which made me quickly stand up and head over to where my fallen brother laid. However, once I got near where he was supposed to be, I looked around to find that his body was no longer there. It had disappeared. I only saw Serena standing there, her back to me and her head down while she shed tears. I tried to walk over to her silently, but when I placed my left foot down to step forward, I broke something underneath my boot. My wife quickly turned to look over at me, surprised, and gasped slightly. Having been noticed, I calmly walked over to her. She turned to me and looked back down at the ground. I gently wrapped my arms around Serena to comfort her, where she just fell into my grasp and began to cry even harder. "I'm so sorry, Ray," she said. "There was nothing I could do to help him." "It's alright, Serena," I quietly said. "Don't blame yourself for this. It was my fault, not yours. I could have saved him if I had stayed by his side. I should have." I went to shed tears of my own, while Serena wrapped her arms around me. The two of us just stood there in silence for about 5 minutes, completely oblivious to the rest of the world. For my brother, this is for you. I'm sorry for what happened. I pray that you will forgive me when it's my time to go. To be with you once again. I will never forget you. I'm sorry, Zaec's train, Shero, my twin brother. May your soul be forever peaceful in the realm of Illume. Goodbye. This concludes the reading of Chapter 17. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you like what you've seen and heard, there will be a link to my physical works in the description below. With that being said, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again next week, reading Chapter 18.